the solution-focused model was more famous, and I think, yeah, I know that the team started to sort of move apart a bit, and people started to travel. And
yes.
can you describe a bit what happened?
Well, as we got busier, and as some traveling started, and as the training program got bigger, there were times when our training program lasted 1 to 2 years, and people were there 1 day a week, or sometimes they were invited to be behind the mirror if they had the time, other times too. We diversified in our jobs. Insu was head of training until she traveled so much, and I became head of training. And so we didn't have a chance to sit together and talk about and watch videotapes and talk. Certainly not as much. And so Steve began to do more research thinking. He and Alex Molnar did some, and then Wally Gingrich came along was interested in, I think, learning solution-focused therapy because he was a professor at the university in social work. And then he stayed on to do research, and Michelle Weena Davis was a student for a year and was interested in research. And so the research group would meet separately, and I would be seeing clients or supervising. We would have meetings, but it wasn't like the first couple of years where everything was together and everything would evolve together. And then Jim left because they were going to adopt. Jim Dirks left because they were adopting a child. They had no children, and his wife was a teacher and supporting them, and she wanted to stay home with the child, so Jim left and took a job. So he was gone. Marilyn LaCourte left a year later. I'm trying to remember why. I don't know, but she went to the same place where Jim was working. Elam still came back and forth, but Stephen Insu and I were alone a lot together. And when he wrote Keys, my office there was a corridor between my office and his, a narrow corridor. There were rooms here and rooms there. So his room was here, and his computer was right by the door, and my desk was right by the door across the hall. So as he wrote Keys, he would hand the pages over to me. What do you think? What do you think? Make comments, you know. So Insu, Steve, and I, for quite a number of years, toward the end, were alone, other than students and some of the students who came on as employees. My now partner, Marilyn Bonjean, had a private practice there. She wanted to become a approved supervisor of the American Association for Marriage and Family, as did other people. So we supervised people for that credential. We were very busy. There wasn't that much time for all that camaraderie that we had before, you know, which was kind of actually sad, you know. I know I missed it. I remember saying to Steve, "Your meeting, I'd love to hear what's going on." He said, "Well, you're invited." I said, "Well, let me know when the meeting is," you know. Everybody was sort of in their own head after a while, not in any way trying to cut anybody out, but busy doing their own thing, writing, you know, started. And when the traveling started, Insu and Steve, of course, were asked primarily first, and mostly Steve because of his writing. And eventually there were too many invitations, and I didn't start, really, as you said, I didn't start writing till later. I always wanted to, but it took some courage. It took me some time, I don't know. And but So I decided to leave in 1987 or so. I think I began to think they're out there traveling. I mean, the group isn't, it's not a group anymore. And I think what was, I remember now there was we would go to meetings, the three of us, and people would say, oh, who are you? Um, I remember one meeting, we was standing around, and somebody of great importance um, said something like, you work at BFTC? And, you know, and that kind of thing started to happen. And that didn't bother me because I knew if I write and make a name for myself, that's my problem, to have a name for myself. But I sort of felt I never would. I'd always be the person who works with them. And it was an echo of my life. I got married young. I was always my parents' daughter. Then I married my husband. I never lived on my own. I was never independent. And he was a medical student and I was nothing. I was just the wife. And so I was his wife. Then the children came and I was their mother. And then now I was finally, you know, I had a career which I loved, but I still wasn't me alone. But I didn't want to leave because I was so attached to them. So it took me a year of, it was a process of what should I do. And I would go, and I finally decided I would try having a private practice by myself, because a lot of people did. And that way I would also have a little more time for the family because things were getting kind of busy. And most of all, I wanted some time to write, which I somehow wasn't getting. And when I told Stephen and Sue, they said, please don't leave. What do you want? What do you want him to stay? And I said, there's nothing you can give me. It's sort of a personal identity issue. And they said, why don't you stay and administer you become the top administrator. I said, I don't want to be the administrator because they were traveling so much. So, you know, they accepted it. I was planning to rent a single office for myself somewhere. I was looking for a single office.